Hong Kong makes headlines every day. Now, Hong Kong police have arrested at least 15 minors under the age of 16 for illegal demonstrations since June, the youngest of whom was just 12 years old. With so many adolescents involved in the current violence, heated discussion has emerged about the city's education system. How is it failing the people it's meant to serve? What are the underlying problems? And what should be the goals in any reform in Hong Kong's education system? To discuss these issues more, I'm happy to be joined in the studio in the first part of the program by HUIYAO, President of the Center for China and Globalization. We'll also speak to Whitman Hung, Hong Kong's deputy to the 13th National People's Congress, via satellite from Hong Kong. In the second part of the program, when we come back, we'll have an exclusive interview with SERIGNE MBAYE THIAM, Vice Chair of the Global Partnership for Education. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Ray. Welcome to Dialogue, Harry. First and foremost, why are so many young people in Hong Kong arrested on charges of violating regulations about the demonstrations? The critical issue, I'm afraid, is education. The way these young guys in Hong Kong have been educated. Anything went wrong?
Well, I think there's probably quite a few reasons. First of all, I mean, when those youngsters still at a very early age of the development of their personality and outlook, it has been influenced by many fronts. But also the emotional, the early age emotions, and probably also runs wild from time to time. And so it's always this kind of age is unpredictable. I mean, every family has kind of a rebellion, teenager children as well. So I think there's a lot of factors and elements probably combined. Of course, education certainly played a big role. That's why I'm thinking there's probably, since China take over Hong Kong, there was no history probably on the mainland development, on the open door policy, or maybe on the development of the how the one country, two system work together. So that probably somehow is missing. Even though in theory or maybe in system it has come back, but maybe emotion there was still a part. So there's many reasons for that, I think.
Obviously, there are many structural problems that have long existed in Hong Kong concerning the dissatisfaction of the younger generation. For example, upward mobility, the way they were educated, as well as soaring housing prices, the embarrassment of housing conditions for those poor people. That's why they get angry. Now, let me turn to Mr. Whitman Hung, Hong Kong deputy to the 13th National People's Congress, for his authoritative answer and comments on why there's such a level of dissatisfaction by the young in Hong Kong who unleashed their anger and sabotaged the public properties, as well as created so much mess that has utterly ruined the reputation of Hong Kong being a nice place for rule of law. So what do you think of these reasons behind the anger of the young?
Well, first of all, the anger is not just of the young. I mean, there's a certain group of people in the society, actually a reasonable large number, who are unhappy with Hong Kong's current situation or what happened in the past, I don't know, 20, 15 years. Both you just mentioned about property prices, about mobility, there's the inequality of income, inequality of asset, various things. But the young are more eager to express their anger. Okay, if you're a father and you are having responsible for the breadline of your home, you may not have the time or the willingness to or the courage to go out and express such anger. So that's one reason. And secondly, of course, as HUIYAO just mentioned, at young ages, people are much easier to be encouraged to do violent things. I mean, if you look at what happened in the Cultural Revolution in China, what happened in various parts of the world, when a movement involves adolescents, young people, it turns into violent very easily. I think that's just the nature of human growing up.
There's always the issue of how to look at history. And ever since the handover in 1997, there's this chronic issue of the colonial legacy. It seems many who have long lived in Hong Kong complained a lot about why SER authorities failed to get rid of the colonial influence that's implied in the textbooks of students, either at the primary level or the tertiary level. HUIYAO, in your observation, what went wrong?
Well, I think that you know there's no emphasis of probably enough history. The integration with mainland is one of the reasons. The other reason is that the achievement of China's opening up, like lifting 800 million people out of poverty, like China joined WTO, China becomes second largest economy, and Hong Kong's role in opening up China, you know, stimulating the special economic zones like integrate with Shenzhen. This kind of a contemporary activities is happening every day, which I think probably wasn't emphasized if we look in retrospect. But I totally agree with what you just said, is that the upward mobility and also the future prospect, job prospect for the young people, particularly how many years they are working to get a little apartment, is unthinkable. So I think probably the way for future to get out of that is still for young people to really, how can we deepen the integration with the mainland? For example, the Great Bay Area. So if a Hong Kong youngster, young people, if they can work in the Pearl River Delta, if they can have an education there, if they can have a social security there, if you can have a credential recognized there, if you get hospital, schooling, and if they can buy apartment there. So if they have a husband, wife there, children there, I mean, that would be really, I think, a long-term solution to really, calm them down. And also we have young people from mainland to go there to work, and also they can commute as well, back and forth. So I think in the long term we have to think about those economic prospects. I think the textbook and other things is one of the reasons, but not the only reason. Right.
Henry Wang seeks to address the structural package of the problems that have enabled and prompted young people to take to the street in great anger. Let me go back to Whitman, Hong. Now, Great Britain seems to be very proud of its elite education. Look at the importance of Oxford and Cambridge. Most brilliant politicians in Westminster actually came from these two most prestigious universities. Likewise, before 1997, it seems that Hong Kong was very proud of what it had inherited from the UK Empire, namely elite education. Therefore, with the rapid enrollment enlargement in Hong Kong well underway, it seems the moment you graduate, you're going to become jobless. What do you think of, say, the consequences arising from rapid expansion of the enrollment programs, from elite education to popularization of ordinary tertiary education?
Well, first of all, I think the elite education belonged to the past. I mean, I was educated in the colonial days and grown up. We can talk about textbook later, but even if you go to the UK today, okay, I know it because I've been there recently. They are trying to say they're opening up more Cambridge and Oxford to the general community, try to have more people from the government school instead of from those traditional public schools. So what happened is, during Mr. Tung Chee-hwa's days, he enlarged the enrollment of universities and expanded to today. So when I went to the Hong Kong Polytechnic, actually at that time it wasn't even a university, it was about 4% of secondary graduates can go into tertiary education. Nowadays it's about 20%. Okay, if you plus all the people who went abroad, so it will be about 30%. But in my opinion, actually this is not enough instead of too much. If you look at how Hong Kong need to transform, we need to transform ourselves into a knowledge-based economy, and a knowledge-based economy can't be run with only 30% graduates. Okay, I think what I need to bring to your attention is that university graduates will not be jobless. In fact, we have a 2.8% unemployment for a very long time. Just after this incident, it raised to about 2.9. Now, with the current incident, maybe it will be significantly increased by the end of the year. But if you look at the university graduates, they can easily find a job. The issue is upward mobility once they get into the job, and also about the narrowing of, only in Hong Kong, if you're in finance, if you are in, professional services such as accounting and law, you perform very well.
The last issue is very much about why the SER governments for many generations have tried in vain to cultivate a sense of international education. Instead, young people in Hong Kong have for years been misguided by what is called the liberal education in this territory. What do you think of, say, the differences between liberal education and the national education?
Well, first of all, I think let's clarify a few things. You previously just mentioned that the SER government, how come they didn't try to remove the colonial thing? Well, until this date, there has never been a mandate to remove colonial influences. Okay, not the SAR government, not anybody talk about it until recently. Secondly, liberal education had been introduced as part of the education reform a while ago. It's not a replacement of national education. It was at that time what they said was to change the education system of a secondary school so that children can have a broader sense of what's happening with the world. Now, I personally oppose this because I think it's too early. Liberal education is a good thing to do in the first year of university. It's not good to do it in secondary school when children have not already developed their worldview. Okay, another thing is with liberal education, the problem is there is actually no official syllabus. Okay, and there's no official syllabus, no examination requirement. It's more about, the teacher can teach whatever they want to teach, and then the marker will then decide when there is an exam. So for that, so basically the government do not do anything. But then there are other people, various reasons or various backgrounds, they create the different kind of textbook. At the beginning, it wasn't even textbook. It was just some education training material, teaching material. Okay, the teachers' union in Hong Kong, they created such material to be used by the teachers, theoretically to help them to teach liberal education. But if you look at those materials, then you can find easily there are things that may not be entirely factual, and also there is a strong tendency against, for example, the mainland Chinese government. There has been a different kind of approach when the SAR government tried to introduce national education in 2012. There was a strong opposition. Well, at the beginning, it wasn't that strong. It was actually went past the legislature. But until the summer of 2012, because there was actually a legislative election at the end of that year, all of a sudden, all the opposition of the national education became so high that finally the government withdrew.
Thank you so much.
Once the government withdraws, so there is, it become, yes.
Thank you so much. Obviously, what we've been discussing here is an issue of how to define national identity of the Hong Kong people since 1997 and where the ancestral root of these people lies after the handover. And that means a lot for the future about being patriotic. With that, we come to the end of the first part of the program with Henry Wang HUIYAO, chairman of CECG, and Mr. Whitman Hung, deputy to the 13th National People's Congress. When we come back, we'll take a second look at how important education is for developing countries. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The success story of the Chinese economy is based on good education other than diligence of the Chinese people. But can the Chinese model, which has its own problems, be easily applied elsewhere around the world? What is the relevance of education for employment and poverty alleviation in a developing country? To discuss these issues and more, we are honored to be joined here by Mr. SERIGNE MBAYE THIAM, Vice Chair of the Global Partnership for Education. I'd like to have your thoughts on this issue, the importance of primary education for the development of a poor country.
Yes, I think that education is the best way to deal with other problems of development in a country. Education helps to develop all the skills we need for economic growth. And education also is a basic way to develop health in the country. For example, if you have a mother well educated, this mother cares in best way for the children. I think that also primary education in country, in developing country, is important to have skilled people for the development of the country.
Do you think a government, for example, in Senegal, will have enough fund, enough financial resources to support compulsory and free education at the primary level?
Yes. For example, in the case of Senegal, the government spends 25% of the budget in education.
Well, that's a lot.
More than 6% of GDP in education. But it is not enough to deal, to support all the education needs. That's why in Senegal, we work also with Global Partnership of Education, with a multilateral fund who finance education in developing country. But the most important effort in financing education is an effort of the government of Senegal.
Next year, Senegal will host the next round of FOCAC, a dialogue between
2021.
Okay, 2 years from now. That's
Yes.
not very far away. Are you ready? And what kind of success story are you going to share with the rest of the world, particularly with the friendly Chinese people here, about the miracles and the success of your education? Because you have emphasized correctly and wisely that education is so important for economic development and for health.
Yes. The relationship between Senegal and China is very deep. And also, I think that the relationship between China and Africa are also very deep. And that's why we are going to host FOCAD in 2021. It is a way for China to recognize the leadership of President Macky Sall, President of Senegal. And we are happy to host the next FOCAD in Senegal. I think that in the fields of education, we have many to show, because we have made many progress in access to education and also to improve the quality of education.
Excuse me, are you suggesting that women in underdeveloped countries, such as Senegal, can enjoy easy and equal access to education, and therefore a lot of opportunities for this group, and also people in rural areas
Yes.
could also enjoy equal opportunity for good education in your country?
For example, I can tell you that in Senegal, in pre-primary education, we have the equality between girls and boys in the school. In primary education also, we have equality between girls and boys in school, and also in secondary education. Since last year, we had also this equality. So during this period, we have promoted a lot education of girls in Senegal, and also we worked to eliminate inequity in education. In the constitution of Senegal, education is a duty for the government.
First of all, it's the duty,
Yes,
the
for
public duty of the government.
For the government to deliver public and free education. And this commitment of the government meets also the commitment of the international community to say that we have to deliver free education, free basic education for the children. And in Senegal, in the primary school, more than 90% is public education. We can see also private education for the religious community or other community, but fundamentally, education in Senegal is free and public.
That's a very good example, and China should aspire to learn more from our friendly African friends.
China have made
Senegal.
a lot of progress in education.
Well, let me risk this question. Let's think about it together. China is known for its multi-ethnicity, and here is the issue of integration, cultural integration. Obviously, in a country where Han people account for well over 90% of the population, if you could speak Mandarin very well, if you can speak Chinese very well, then it's easier for a member from the ethnic group to find a job in the hinterland, in the more prosperous coastal areas. But if you refuse to be integrated into the mainstream Han people or Chinese people because they say, oh, I'm proud of my mother culture, my own mother ethnic culture, I refuse to be integrated, then it will be a lot of more difficult for them to be integrated into the Chinese market. Because in the case of a market economy, free flow of labor force and free movement of the human resources is one of the hallmarks to ensure success of a liberal market economy. If you refuse to be educated about the basic skills like command of Mandarin or in your case French in Senegal, don't you think for a person from a tribal culture, it will be very difficult. It will be very difficult to be employed.
I think that education is a way to build a strong society, a unified society. And it's also a way to build a citizen of a country. But
citizenship of a country.
Yes, and to build also a citizenship of the world. You have to be also citizen of the world. And in Senegal, in our educational system, we try to take into account the specificities of some regions, but to have a curricula who can build a Senegalese citizen open to the world also. And I think that it's our philosophy of education.
Very simply, Your Excellency, do you have this challenge of tribal and tribalism?
We don't have it in Senegal. We have the common language of learning is French. But we have national language in Senegal.
How many other languages do you
have? We have 25 other national language. We have to take this into account, but we have also to try to build a unique citizen of Senegal open to the other culture in the country.
That's the cosmopolitan nature of education, of good education, to be inclusive, right? So you have the ethnic groups and the women. They are said to be the disadvantaged social groups. If they can be easily integrated into the rest of the world, does it mean good job opportunity? What about the situation of employment in a developing country in terms of the relationship between good primary education and the prospects of having a good job?
Yes, I think that education is a way to increase the income of people. Not only academic education, it is important also after a basic education to give the children opportunity to have vocational education. Vocational education can prepare them to integrate the world of job and of manufacturing and so on. I think that it's not only to allow all the young to go to university, but also to can have vocational and training to be productive.
Your Excellency, let me tell you, the Chinese are very practical. Chinese parents in particular are very practical in that they want to send their children to the best university.
Yes.
Not just those in China, but such as Oxford, Cambridge in the UK, and Oxford, Harvard.
You have also very good university in China.
We do have,
yes.
But some of the Chinese parents believe their children could be educated in Harvard, then it's a lot easier for them to find the best company, to have the highest and the best salary working for a good company. That means the parents would be very demanding about the results of the examination, the marks of the examination. It's what we call the exam-oriented education.
Yes.
But this issue is put under scrutiny seriously by the general public, and increasingly so. Young students don't like to always be asked to survive one examination after another. They hate examination. So is that also a concern that you have tried very hard to look into?
Yes, I think that in educational system, you cannot avoid the fact that some students are very brilliant, and some students have to go to the best university. But the purpose of a national education in a country is to bring all children in a level of competence that they can be useful for the society. We have to take into account the students who have abilities to go in excellent schools, excellent universities, but also we have to take into account the children who don't have these abilities, and we have to bring them to be able, on the basis of their own capacities, to serve their country.
Now, 51 of GPE's partner countries are actually members of the BRI, and countries
more than 51
exactly.
members of GPE are also members of
BRI.
BRI.
Yeah.
Yes.
And countries that GPE works most closely with are also among those who are very open to Chinese investment. Tell us why.
I think that it is because China is in the South-South cooperation. For the developing country, it is easier to discuss with China and to be inspired by the experience of China in the path of development.
Yes, it's indeed for partners, China included, to work in partnership with the GPE and your member countries without pride and prejudice to ensure level playing field in the age of globalization. The Chinese authorities have for years put much emphasis on the importance of South-South cooperation to help developing countries and to share co-prosperity. With that, we come to the end of this part with a very famous educator from Senegal. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.